Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. So today's video is not necessarily going to be the most fun and happy video, but I feel like it is a really important topic to touch on, and that is how to deal with your rats passing away. So when it comes to owning rats, they don't have a very long lifespan. On average they do live about 2 years, which in the grand scheme of things is not a very long time at all. It does go by quite quickly sometimes, and we do have to deal with death a lot more than other people that have, say, rabbits or dogs, pets that do have generally a longer lifespan. So although it's not the nicest thing to have to talk about, I do think it is really important to be prepared for when the end does come and know how to deal with this, not only within yourself but for the other rats you may have as well. I think it is really important to be prepared for when this does happen, and hopefully by watching this video you guys are a lot more prepared, and it does make things a little bit more easy when the time does come. So as you guys know, unfortunately I did have to have Sunday, one of my rats, put to sleep recently, and I think I've got pretty good at dealing with this. I do obviously cry, I do feel sad, but I do think I've kind of worked out my routine of dealing with this myself. Obviously everyone deals with things very differently, so I'm not going to sit down in this video and talk to you about how you should personally grieve, because everyone grieves differently. It's a different thing for everyone, and I think as I've got older I do grieve differently than when I was 12. I would cry for days, weeks on end when I lost a hamster or something. So I think as I have got older I deal with things a lot differently than when I was younger. So everyone deals with things differently. I'm not going to tell you how you should grieve yourself. So as I said, when it comes to you personally, when you do lose your rats, you may deal with this in a very different way than I do, but something that I find helps is reflecting on the life I had with the rat rather than the fact that they have unfortunately passed away. So looking back at pictures and making videos, although I didn't make one for Sunday, that was a personal choice. I do like looking back at old pictures and videos. I find that does really help. Something else I do, which I did show to you guys recently, is I do take all of my rats' paw prints. This just gives me something to remember them by that I can have in my room, and I think it's a really nice thing to remember them by, so I'll leave the video of that linked in the iCards and in the description. I do this with all of my rats, and hopefully I'm going to carry on for a very long time because it is something that does personally help me cope. I should also mention most of the things I'm going to cover in this video you can also apply to mice as well, because they are very similar. Some of the things do apply to them as well. So if you're watching this and you don't have rats and you do have another social animal, a lot of the things in this video you can apply to them too. So one of the biggest things to consider and prepare for is the actual burial of the animal themselves. I know it's not the nicest thing to have to consider, but I have had people contacting me saying they live in an apartment and they're not too sure what to do with their rats once they have passed away. And something that I personally do and I've been doing for quite a long time now is burying all of my animals in plant pots. Now personally, when I lived at university I didn't have like a garden where I could physically bury my animals in, so I did choose to put them in plant pots, and I also wanted to bring them with me. I didn't like the idea of having to leave them behind, so plant pots is a really good option. You can put a really nice plant in there to remember them, and you can make like a little plaque or something. If cremation is not something that you can personally afford, this is also a really good option for being able to bring your rats with you. So yeah, I know that's not the nicest thing to have to consider, but it is something you should probably prepare for, just to make sure you do have a plan just in case something does happen and you have to quickly figure out what you're going to do. So the biggest thing I wanted to touch on in this video is not specifically dealing with the loss of your rats yourselves, but helping your other rats deal with the loss as well. So as we know, rats are highly intelligent and social animals, and they do form very close bonds with their cage mates, and suddenly losing or the loss of a rat in that cage can very much affect the other rats living in the cage too. So being such complex and intelligent animals, rats do really feel the grief of losing another rat, and there are a few things you can do to help them in this process. So if one of your rats has passed away and you've taken them to a vet and you've had them put to sleep and you've taken that rat physically out of that cage, it is recommended to put them back in the cage for a short period of time to help the other rats process that that rat is unfortunately gone. Now this is just recommended, it's not something that you have to do, but it does very much help the rats process that the rat has passed away and it's not just gone or missing from the cage, and it does help them deal with that loss. So placing their body in the cage, the other rats may come up to it and sniff it, they might even groom it and just look for signs of life, and it may take a few minutes or even up to an hour for them to process this, and then you will find they will just go away and go back to doing what they were doing before, and then this is how they process the loss of that rat. Now this is a bit grim, but you don't want to leave the body of the rat in the cage unsupervised or for a long period of time. Rats are animals as much as they do have complex emotions. They are still animals and they want to clean up any messes in their environment. So sometimes, unfortunately, if you do leave it overnight or you've not noticed that one of your rats has passed away, sometimes the other rats can clean up the body of the rat that has passed away and eat the body. So you don't want to leave the rat in there for too long because that's not going to be good for you. You're going to see something that you wish you didn't see. So please don't leave the body with them unsupervised. This is a very morbid, heavy video, I apologise, but I think it is very necessary. So after that, you may find that your rats are a bit quiet for a few days. They may be very withdrawn and just sleeping more and hanging out in their hammocks. The important thing is to keep up the routine you have with them. Don't disrupt this because they've already had a disruption in their group and in their cage. You don't want to make this worse, so give them plenty of attention and plenty of treats, possibly even more than you did before, because they are also going through a hard time as well. You want to make sure that they feel loved and they are distracted from losing their friend. So the main reason I'm making this video and the main thing I wanted to talk about is suddenly losing one of your rats and you've only got one other rat, or this can also be applied to mice as well, where you've lost one mouse and you're only left with one single lone rat or mouse. So this would probably be one of my most frequently asked questions. I do get people in my DMs saying that one of their rats or their mice has unexpectedly passed away and they're left with a single rat or mouse by themselves and they just don't know what to do. So this is why I wanted to make this video, to help you guys prepare for the future and hopefully not end up in this situation. So having a rat being used to living in a group or a pair to suddenly being a single lone rat is not ideal. As you know, rats are highly social, so they do require to live in groups. So this rat can become so withdrawn and so depressed with the grief of losing their friend and also being alone, they can actually pass away from this. So we get a lot of people asking me whether they should introduce new rats or mice to their lone rat or mouse, and 99% of the time I would say 100% yes, and you need to do this as soon as possible. I know it is a really tricky time when you're very upset about losing one of your rats and you don't necessarily want to be in that mindset of trying to get new rats, or you possibly don't even want new rats, but you have to put yourself in your single rat's shoes, although rats don't wear shoes, and do what is best for them. So the best case scenario when owning rats or mice and knowing that you do want to continue owning them in the future is preparing ahead. I would recommend that when your rats get to about 6 months old, you start thinking about the possibilities of something going wrong and something happening to one of them, and putting yourself on a waiting list for a breeder or contacting some rescues and asking them if they have any rats. I do recommend you keep up a constant cycle of getting new rats when your rats are about a year old to make sure that none of them are left by themselves. So this is the best case scenario, that one of your older rats passes away but they're not left by themselves because you have thought ahead and planned ahead and got them some new friends to make sure they're not left by themselves. But I know this isn't everyone's ideal situation and sometimes this does not happen, because I was in that position myself with my first rats. One of them passed away just after a year old. I had no idea why he passed away, but that did leave me with a single rat, and it was a very stressful time because he did become very depressed and I was just scrambling to try and find him some friends. So save yourself the stress, make sure you plan ahead to make sure your rats are not left by themselves. But if you are left in this situation, you do have a single rat, it is really important to make sure you get them some friends as soon as you possibly can. Now I know a lot of people do question whether it is okay to just keep this rat by themselves. Most of the time I would say that it's definitely not okay. Unless that rat has some serious medical issues that would mean that putting them through the introduction process of meeting some new rats would put their health at risk and could possibly even kill them with the stress of that if they do have a very serious medical condition like a heart condition or something. I would say 99% of the time you do need to try and get them some new friends. Now I know there are cases where people decide they don't want to own rats anymore, and that is completely fine, but you do still need to do what is best for the rat you are left with. So what should you do if you are left with a single rat that does need to live socially but you don't want to own rats anymore? There are a few things you can do, some of them you might not like, but you do need to remember to do the best thing for that rat. Now the first option is finding someone that has a pre-existing group of rats that that rat can go and live with and live socially like they're meant to, and rehome them to that person. Another option is possibly fostering some rats or borrowing some rats until your lone rat passes away, and then either finding a home for them rats or passing them back to the breeder or the rescue that you borrowed them from. Not every breeder or rescue will be willing to do this, but if you do post on like a forum or a Facebook group asking someone to help you, there should be people willing to lend you a hand and possibly even lend you their rats just to make sure your rat is not living by themselves. But if you do decide you do want to continue owning rats, that is great, and you do need to make sure you get them some new friends as soon as possible. A common mistake I see people do is they have a rat that its friend has passed away and it's coming up to being about 2 years old, and they go out and buy another baby rat by itself to put with that adult rat. Now, it's always recommended to buy or rehome rats in pairs. Baby rats need same age company to develop properly, and you also don't want to end up in the same situation as you were a few months ago when your older rat does pass away. You're going to be in exactly the same place as you were because that young baby rat is then going to be left by itself. So I do recommend if you do have an adult rat by themselves, you go out and get them 2 new friends, or 3 if you want to, just to make sure that things go smoothly and you're not left with a baby rat by themselves. It does also make introductions a lot easier because those baby rats can rely on each other for support and comfort, because meeting a big adult rat can be very scary to them and they shouldn't be going through this alone. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. I know it can be really difficult to think of all of these things when your rat has passed away, but you do need to try to put the single rat that you are left with first and make sure you either rehome them to someone that can give them the company they need, or you do go out and get them some new friends. So a lot of you have been asking me what my plans are. Having lost Sunday recently, I do have 2 rats left. I have Sprout and I have Moose, and Moose is 2.5 years old, which I can't believe he doesn't look his age at all, but I am prepared for the fact that he possibly could not live much longer even though his health is perfectly fine. And then Sprout, on the other hand, his birthday is in 2 weeks. He's going to be 2 years old on the 28th of November, so time is ticking. I do need to make sure I get them some friends as soon as possible to make sure that one of them is not left by themselves. I am doing everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. So I am on a waiting list for babies from a breeder. I've been on this waiting list since summer and I've been on it for a few months now, but realistically I probably should have got on that at the beginning of the year because I am nowhere near the top and I'm starting to panic a bit that my boys are getting old and I do need to come up with a solution to make sure that none of them are left by themselves. So although I'm on that waiting list, I don't think that's gonna time out right, so I have been looking at rescues and trying to find some rats to adopt that are a bit younger to bring in and introduce to them, just to make sure one of the boys is not left by themselves. I'm not going to go into why I chose to go with a breeder as opposed to rescuing, because I'm probably going to end up rescuing or adopting some more anyway, but that's a whole separate video. That's not what this video is about. I just wanted to quickly tell you guys what my plans are, because some of you have been wondering, because my boys are getting quite old and I do need to have some sort of game plan. So yeah, that is it for today's video. I'm sorry it wasn't the most happy one or fun one. I do have plenty more of those on my channel, but it is a really important topic to touch on. I do get asked quite a bit about it in my DMs and it is a very sensitive subject. So if you have lost one of your rats recently, I'm really sorry and I hope you're dealing with it okay and you're taking the time with yourself to remember them and appreciate the time you did have with them, and also preparing for your other rats as well. If you want to see some more videos that are a bit more happier than this one, please make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!